Today we're going to talk about my favorite lens from Fujifilm that I've ever owned at least, and that's the XF35mm F2.0. I'm trying to do a good job on this channel of balancing discussions that aren't completely gear related with gear reviews and gear specific talk. But I have enjoyed some of the feedback that I got on my XH1 video and videos like that. So I wanted to revisit some of this gear that I've talked about before, but it's been a while. And since I have gained a lot of new subscribers since the last time I talked about this lens, I figure it's a perfect time to do a new video on it. So this is the XF35mm F2.0 R WR is the complete name of it. I'm not going to go into stats and some of the detailed info in that regard in this video. I did make a review of this lens a while back, at least a year, if not 2 years ago. I'll put a link in the description. I'm not completely happy with that review. Maybe I'll do a more thorough one later. This is more of an emotional video about it and kind of retelling the story of me getting this lens and using this lens. If you follow the channel for quite a while, you've heard me tell this story a handful of times in other videos. But this was my first Fujifilm Prime that I got. My entry into the Fujifilm system, camera-wise, was a Fujifilm X-T100. So it was one of the non-X-Trans sensor cameras. They since had an XT200, but now I think that line of camera is going away or is officially discontinued. I don't think they're continuing that line. But anyways, the XT100 was my first camera in this lineup, and I had the kit lens with that, which was like the 15 to 45 XC. But since I knew that on my Canon full frame system, whether it was with the 6D or the film muscle Rs that I would use in the Canon system, I knew that the 50mm focal length was my favorite focal length. The Canon Nifty 50, the 50mm 1.8, was one of my most used and still one of my most favorite lenses of any system, and it's such a great value for the money that I knew I wanted to have that focal length on the Fuji system. And I've even on like Nikon gear, I've enjoyed the 50mm lenses that they have. So 50mm is a lens that I'm very familiar with. It was the focal length that I started with, like many people do start with. Especially if you started back in the film days, like I did. My Olympus OM 10 was my first film camera, my brother's and I's first film camera, and that had a 50mm 1.8 on there. So that was just a normal lens to me. I got really used to using that lens. So every time I jump into a new system, I tried to get the 50mm equivalent for that system. At the time I bought this, the 35-1.4 was way out of my budget. But I did watch a lot of videos, and there was a lot of people that really liked this lens, so I may have been drawn to this one anyway because of the weather sealing and whatnot. So I bought this lens when I was using the XT100. I ended up not really liking that camera too much, but I knew the Fujifilm system had more to offer. That camera, to me, that camera didn't completely have everything to offer that I was looking for in the Fuji system. I wanted to try the X-Trans sensor. So I wanted a camera with that sensor in there. So I sold the XT100, but I kept this lens because I knew at some point I would need it again. I sold the XT100, and it was actually a few months, almost 6 months, maybe not quite 6 months, before I got another Fujifilm camera. But I kept a hold of this lens, and I'm super glad I did, because this has stayed with me during this whole time. That was almost 3 to 4 years ago now, and this has been one of the most consistent things in my photography kit, regardless of brand and format. I've had a lot of cameras come in and out, a lot of lenses come in and out, and this is one of the most consistent pieces of gear that I own. So this video is talking a little bit about kind of why that is, and if I have any different thoughts on this now, trying the 35-1.4, if I have different thoughts because of what else is out there now, like the 33-1.4 and things like this. What are my views on this now compared to what they were 2 or 3 years ago? Since this is not going to be a comparison video, I'm not going to try to sell you on this lens over the 35-1.4 or over the 33-1.4. Those are both fantastic lenses, and if you can afford those lenses and you feel like you can get the benefits of those lenses, get those lenses. This is about just personal preference, and for me, how I've found my preference of lenses, with a caveat, because I haven't tried the 33-1.4. That may become my favorite lens once I try that 33-1.4. That may become my new favorite lens. I can't speak from experience yet with that lens because I haven't tried it. But what I did know about myself, a few things that I do really like when I shoot that I was looking for in a lens was a close focus distance. I want a decent sharpness. It doesn't have to be the sharpest in the world. I appreciate any sharpness that the lens provides, granted, but I don't chase that. I want a decent aperture. 2.0 is not super fast, but it's better than 2.8. You know, it's not too bad. I want a good design and good build quality, and an overall solid image quality, which I think is kind of a given. This checked all those boxes for me. I did a lot of research, watched a lot of videos before I purchased it, just to make sure there was no obstacles or any gotchas that I would run into after I bought it. So I went into this purchase with a lot of research knowledge and a lot of personal experience from using 50mm equivalent lenses. Some of the things that I liked about this lens from the beginning are some of the reasons why I continue to return to this lens. One of the coolest things, I think, are the design and build quality of these lenses. And for me personally, that can't be overstated. That's an important aspect. And an aspect of these lenses that I truly appreciate it. Yeah, they're not cheap. They're not as cheap as these TT Artisans or TT Artisan or 7 Artisans lenses, but they are still relatively affordable, $340 range or so. But the build quality and design is just really superb. It's pretty compact, one of the smallest lenses I own, and it's made of metal, as you know, I'm sure. The aperture ring and the focus ring feel really well made, and I like the ode to the Leica M lens system that these have to it. There's just kind of remind me of that, and that's one of the things I like about the Fujifilm system, where you have these lenses and some of the camera bodies. Obviously my XH1 doesn't look like a Leica M camera by any means, but you have these cameras and lens combos that can get you a relatively compact setup in a similar way than a Leica M camera and an M lens does. So they really have a similar vibe to them in my mind, and you know, this lens delivers on that. More so than the 35-1.4, although that's a fantastic lens, and it's not huge. That's pretty small as well. I incorrectly stated the opposite in my original review of this lens. I said the 35 was much bigger, but I was thinking of the 16-1.4 and not the 35-1.4. Anyways, the 35-1.4 is not huge in height, but it's a little wider, and so this one has, to me, a slight advantage on size, design, and just the feel of it. So speaking of the 35-1.4 compared to this lens, and I'm like I said, I'm not going to do an actual comparison, but I just want to compare the the YouTube attention that they both get. This gets very little, especially nowadays, and the 35-1.4 obviously got a lot in the beginning, and I'd say like last year into this year maybe a little bit, that it's kind of been revived. The 35-1.4 got a lot of new attention because a lot more hit the used market, and with the 33-1.4 coming out, I think a lot of people were selling the 35-1.4 and trying that. So a lot were hitting the used market. I think a lot of new reviews came out. A lot of new videos about the 35-1.4 came out. That's a fantastic lens, and I've been really impressed with the images that I get from that lens. But I think because that is out there and the 33-1.4 is out there, this sometimes can be overlooked. And I don't want to say it's the most overlooked Fujifilm lens, because I definitely don't think I can claim that for sure. I don't know, but I do think it is overlooked and overshadowed, especially now with all the other choices out there. But for me, it still has a lot of things going for it that neither of those other two lenses have. The 33-1.4 is taller and heavier. The 35-1.4 is a little wider, but also built a little differently. And obviously the autofocus of the 35-1.4 is not on par with this or the 33-1.4. So there's those things. There's also little things that I notice and that are preferences to me that, you know, I can't tell you whether they're going to bother you or not. But one of the things that bugs me a little bit about the 35-1.4 in comparison to this is that, you know, when 35-1.4 does focus, the actual front of the lens does move in and out a little bit. And I've been so spoiled with these small primes like the 23, the 35, the 16. They don't move. The focusing happens internally, and the external element doesn't move. And that's really nice. I mean, that it's easy to take the little stuff like that for granted. Granted, the 35-1.4, like I said, it doesn't. Nothing bad happens because of that. That's just a personal preference for me to prefer this over that. But it is a lot of stuff like that that adds up to me probably choosing this more over a 35-1.4 at this moment, because it fits my preference in terms of usability and build quality, design, and it performs to a level that I want and expect. The 35-1.4 performs, superb. Has superb performance, granted, but it doesn't check all those other boxes for me. But to me, when I add it all up, I prefer this lens. But I didn't want to make this video about this is better than 35-1.4, because this isn't about that. This is a video about personal preference, as almost all of the videos are, but I just want to emphasize that just like with me really liking the X-T2 and those style of cameras, this is about learning what you like and making your decisions based on that, and and feeling confident and comfortable in those decisions. I've found that I love the 50mm focal length for what I've shot mostly in my photography career. I found that I really appreciate this small, compact design and build quality of these lenses, and I appreciate everything else about this lens. So that's why I know what lenses and stuff and camera bodies that I've started to discover what lenses and camera bodies that I will use and I will be excited to use, and I'm going to focus on those and keep those. And if I collect anything, it's going to be stuff that matches my preference and my liking, and stuff that I test out and don't like will come in and go out. I'll try it and sell it, or rent it and and not buy it, and so forth. And this is what I encourage all of you guys to do if you have the capability to do so. Go to keh.com, go to usedphotopro.com, or eBay if you feel comfortable there. But go to a trusted seller. Experiment with different lenses that you haven't tried yet, and find out what you prefer, what your preference is. I mean, take all these YouTube videos, find the important parts of these videos that speak to you, that you connect with, find people that shoot similar things that you do, or maybe have similar preferences that you do, and put it all together, and then you might have a better roadmap. But I found out that I love this focal length just from, shooting over and over and over, and changing lenses, but always coming back to this lens, always being drawn to this focal length. Now, I will say lately, as I continue to challenge myself or extend my style of shooting to stretch my creativity a little bit, I have noticed that I have found more situations where I'm drawn to the 23 or 35 equivalent than the 35 or anything longer, because the benefits of that slightly wider focal length. Maybe more so than when I first bought it. When I first bought it, it took me a bit to get used to it because I've been so used to the 50mm equivalent. But now lately, as I've been shooting in different situations, as more people have been out on the street, that's one of the changes, is that there's more people on the street now. When I do street photography, the crowds are larger. I noticed I've been wanting to get more close up and environmental shots, and so I've noticed that it's been nice to have that to turn to when I need it. But these are things you find out as you shoot. And granted, you can't have, especially when you're starting out, you can't have 100 lenses and be able to experiment with all of them. But I think you can pick a couple key ones, or you can pick a zoom lens, take out the zoom lens and really shoot a whole bunch of photos over weeks or months, and really study what focal lengths you're drawn to. Other people have suggested this too, and I think this is a fantastic way to approach learning what your preferences are. Is get a zoom lens, get the 18 to 55 kit lens, get the 16 to 80 or whatever it is. Shoot all these, go out and shoot weeks or months and all these ranges, and really analyze what focal lengths you're drawn to. Then when you found those focal lengths or close to them, whether it's the 23, the 35, then you can jump in and experiment with one of the primes. And I can't suggest this one highly enough for anyone who wants to try the 50mm-ish equivalent focal length. This is like a 52.5 or something like that equivalent, but still it's close enough to a 50 that I just say 50. But I can't recommend this enough because it gives you really, really good image quality. It gives you a compact design that is reminiscent of the Leica M lenses, and just a really good bang for the buck. The other thing that we have available to us now is these really affordable third-party lenses, like this TT Artisan 35 or this 7 Artisans 35mm. Both are fantastic lenses, especially for the price. And if you know that this is the focal length for you, you could go get a lens like this that has fantastic build quality, solid image quality, and again, also have a little bit of M-lens vibe to the design. I like to bounce between the manual focus third-party lenses and the autofocus 35mm from Fujifilm, depending on the situation. Most of the time, this is the lens I leave the house with. But like I said, I've been incorporating the 23mm a little bit more lately because of the certain situations where I know I need that focal length. But this is the lens that's on my camera most of the time, depending on what camera I'm concentrating on using at that moment. If you've watched recently, you know I have. Right now, I just have two cameras, the XT4 and the XH1. So depending on if I'm in the XH1 mode where I'm taking this out all the time, then this just stays on the camera, and I don't need to think about anything else. I rarely take a second lens out when I go shooting street photography anymore. It's just the camera, the lens that's on the body itself, an extra battery or two, something to blow dust off the lens if I need to, and that's pretty much it. I keep my set of walk around gear pretty simplistic. There's a natural trend to compare every piece of gear to the best out there. Even if you can't afford the best, we're always comparing YouTube photographers, Instagram photographers, bloggers. We're always comparing to the best. So yes, this is a fantastic lens, but is it as sharp as the 33-1.4? No. Is it as, does it open as wide open as a 30? Is the aperture as fast as a 33-1.4? No. So we pick out these things it doesn't have. We concentrate on the list that it doesn't have. And I think that's unfortunate for some people that are searching for a piece of gear that can really get the job done for them, and not really in a hugely compromising way. I mean, this is a fantastic lens. This is a fantastic piece of equipment and an awesome photographic tool. And it's not the 33-1.4 or the 35-1.4, but it's its own thing. It has things that they don't have either, but it's often not presented that way on YouTube or on Instagram and whatnot. It's not sold as the magic lens, or it's not sold as the newest autofocus, the sharpest lens, or one of the sharpest lenses that's out there. So it doesn't have those things going for it. So I think it's been overlooked a little bit. So this whole video is just about reviving that conversation a little bit for me, reviving it for anyone who might find this video, anyone who's searching this lens right now on YouTube. I thought it'd be nice to have something near the top of the results that's more recent. I wanted to revive the conversation about this 35-1.2 because it is one of my favorite lenses, and I can speak with a little more experience now comparing this to the 35-1.4. For me, I've been trying that lens out for a while now. I had to get it out of my system. I had to see what that lens was about. I don't like the term magic of anything in terms of photography gear. I like the excitement that I get. I like the sentiment of something that really is awe-inspiring and that kind of thing. But I don't like the term magic when it comes to describing a camera or a lens, because we're artists talking to fellow artists. We're creators talking to fellow creators. We're not trying to deceive anybody. It's not something there's nothing behind the curtain. We can describe what makes a lens special for the most part. We can break it down. We should be able to say, it's magic because of this, or it feels like it has a magic image quality because of the roll off of the autofocus areas, because of the sharpness, or the image fidelity and the micro contrast, or because of these certain things. Whenever you hear the term magic, you should try to dig a little deeper and try to understand it, if they have something specific to associate with that word. And I know even Fujifilm has described the 35-1.4 as magic. So it's not just YouTubers, it's actual Fujifilm themselves to a certain extent. And that the image quality from that lens is awesome, but it's not for everybody. That lens isn't for everybody. Wanting weather sealing is a real, that's a real valid want on your want list, on your wish list for a lens. Wanting fast, autofocus is, a valid, something valid to want in your lens. A compact design and solid build quality is those are all valid reasons to buy a lens. So you just have to know, out of all the attributes and aspects of a lens, or camera for that matter, what's important to you. And I think, there's no better way to learn that than to shoot as much as you can learn what images you like to create, learn the situations that you like to shoot in. Then you can start to narrow your focus down to the gear that's going to work and that's going to help you make your art happen at the budget that you live in. I think that's one of the key points I haven't talked about enough yet in this video. Is I think many of us would run and get a Leica set up if we could justify it, if we had the money and could justify it. I will probably get a Leica about the same time that I get a Lamborghini. It's just probably not going to happen, and I'm fine with that. So that's not the budget I live in. I don't live in that realm to get that gear. This is the stuff I work with, and I love this stuff. I'm grateful that Fujifilm makes cameras like this and lenses like this, and that these companies make lenses like this as well. We're very lucky to have choices like this. So you just have to learn your preferences on what you shoot, and within your budget, what's going to help you create the stuff you want to create. For me, the 35 F2.0 R WR is one of my favorite pieces of photography gear that I use to create my stuff. So I think that's pretty much it. I think I can wrap this up with confidence that I covered the spirit of what I wanted to talk about. That I think this is an overlooked lens. It's one of my favorite lenses. And I think if you like the 50mm equivalent or think you might like it and you need to experiment, I can't recommend this highly enough. If the 35mm equivalent is your style, then you can pretty much apply everything I said that's positive about this to the 23. This is a fantastic lens as well, and maybe one of the sharpest lenses I've tried. So I think that's it for now. I appreciate everyone for watching. Give me some feedback on maybe a piece of gear that you think is overrated, or something that's in your kit that you like, that fits your preferences, that maybe isn't everyone else's cup of tea. So it'd be nice to build a list of some of this stuff. So again, that's it for now. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.